Vox does some pretty fancy animations, like this one.
AI is a wonderful supplement to students' education journeys as long as it's used responsibly.
There's no way we can do that in CapCut.
Or is there?
Dude, of course there is. Step 1, you want to download all of these free elements that I provided, link in the description below. I created all of them, so I hereby authorize you to use all of them for all of your social medias as much as you want,
without fear of the copyright gods coming after you.
I made or tweaked a lot of these elements in Photoshop, but you can do the same thing in Photopea or Canva. First, let's start by creating these floating heads that you see here on Vox's video. And I showed you the first few seconds of this video, but we're gonna make a little more, have it go all the way over to there. You'll notice that people pop in and out of their respective bubbles and that the bubbles last the entire duration of our sequence. So we want each of these bubbles to last the entire duration for us as well. We're gonna start by taking our first one, which is just Trevor, and I'm gonna just drop into the timeline right here. Next, I'm going to turn off the magnetic timeline, which is this guy right here, so I can move this over. If I don't turn that off, this guy will just pop back into place. And this is our reference clip. We're just gonna stick it way over here in left field. Next, we're gonna add the bubble background. I chose the color purple. I'm gonna drag it to the timeline and then put me on top of it so I can stretch the purple out to last about 35 seconds, which is how long our sequence is gonna last, right about there. And I'm gonna start me just a couple frames after the beginning. You'll see that in Vox's video, we have a person speaking and then it switches to a cutout. So let's go ahead and add the cutout. And I've named it, so that's the Trevor one, and here's the Trevor cutout with pink. We want a little bit before I start speaking so I can pop into the frame. And then I'm gonna drag the other one down here right next to me and make it last the duration of what is going to be our final finished piece, about 35 seconds. So this other guy, I'm gonna zoom in. I'm holding down the command key, the control key on a Mac, and just scrolling my shift wheel to zoom in. Drag this guy down here, make sure there's no space. It goes pink and then me. So that's gonna work. And we want the purple to appear behind me. How do we do that? Pretty simple. We click on the clip of me, go to video cutout and scroll down to auto cutout, which only cuts humans out, and it takes not much time at all, and bam, I'm already cut out. So far we have me as a cutout, and then it's gonna pop into me speaking, and then it's gonna go back to cutout so that when I'm done talking, the next guy can talk. Now, how do I make that into a little floating bubble? Well, we wanna select all of these elements. We're gonna just highlight all of them, including this little piece right here, right click and choose Create Compound Clip. In other programs, it's called nesting, like in Adobe Premiere. In After Effects, it's called pre-composing a clip. Here with this nested clip, this compound clip, we want to turn it into one of those floating bubble things. How do we do that? We make sure it's highlighted. We go up here in the top right and select Mask. We select the circle mask, and we can just scale it up using all of these little handles around it, and we can just physically move it around until it's kind of centered. And for Vox's stuff, you kind of get just their head and shoulders, so we'll kind of try to match that. One thing you want to be careful of is not dragging it up too far, because then this will be cut off for the rest of the video and that'll look bad. So make sure it's down about where you want it, and that looks pretty good to me. Now you want to scale this down because that's too big compared to Vox's stuff. Vox's stuff is like pretty small, so we want to scale it down. If I click and drag one of these handles, it's just going to scale the mask down, so we don't want to do that. We want to select basic, and now we can scale it down either by clicking on one of these corners or by dragging the slider scale down, and something like that looks like it might be pretty good. And this is going to be the first guy, so I'm going to position him over here to start, and we'll adjust where he goes later. Then let's do it for the next guy, just so you can see how to do it. Remember, we're going to need a purple background for the entire thing, so I'm going to drag the purple background and make it last the duration, and notice that it snaps into place because we have snapping on, this guy right here. If I turn that off, this will not snap into place, so I want snapping on for what I'm doing now. Other times you don't, it becomes annoying. The next one would be bad French accent, and I want bad French accent to start when I'm done speaking down here. How can I see that? Well, if I click on this purple background, I type the letter V, and it just hides that for me so I can see what's underneath it. So I see speaking, and then I'm actually going to use the keyboard to go back and forth, the left and right arrows to go back and forth so I can get to the exact frame when I pop off and this thing pops on, and position me right there for my bad French accent, and I'm not going to make you listen to that just yet. Now on either side of me, what do I need? I need the cutout. So I'm just going to grab the French pink right here and make it last the entire duration of this space in here. And then I'm going to grab it again and put it right here and stretch it out so it lasts the duration. And now we have this. It's okay to show this layer now. I'm going to type the letter V. That guy's going to show up. So now we have this. So what's wrong? I'm not cut out. Click on me, select cutout, and select auto cutout, and it'll cut that out. out, and bam, that's ready to be nested. So to nest this guy, highlight all of them, right click, and choose Create Compound Clip. So now I've got 2 of these guys. This one needs a mask as well, so I select Mask, select Circle, and I've got this other guy for a reference right next to him, so I'll scale it after that. But first we need to get it positioned exactly correctly here, so it kind of is similar to the other one. Remember, don't have it go over the top. And now I just click on Basic, and I can scale it down a little bit to match the one next to it. I can get exactly like that if I want to, or I could look and see how I scaled the other one. So that's pretty great right there. Since this will be the next guy in line, I'm going to put him right here. Now I'm going to leave it up to you to do the next 2. The next one is Dude, and the one after that is Bad Australian. I'm going to do it, and then we'll just speed this up in post, so it only takes me 1 second to finish. But you can pause it here if you want to mess around with it and do the rest of them yourself. So here I go. Okay, I've got all of those done. Now we want to animate them. It looks like this so far, so you can see me just popping on the screen at the right times. And I want them to move across the screen, kind of floating across the screen. To do that, I'm going to hide all these guys. I could type V for each one, or I could just click the eyeball over here. It does the same thing. And when I say eyeball, I mean this guy right here. It turns a track completely off and on. We're going to start by animating this guy across the screen. And because this takes kind of a long time, 35 seconds, I don't want him to take all 35 seconds to get across the screen. I want him to have time to finish his stuff and then, be on for a little bit and then kind of disappear. So I want him to start over here. So I'm going to move him where his starting position is, which is, right about here. Let's have him actually be on the screen when I start. And then I want him to finish speaking and then exit the screen somewhere around here. So I'm going to position the plate at the very first frame, make sure that clip is highlighted, jump over here and set a keyframe for position. We're going to change his position as he floats across the screen. And remember that a keyframe marks the beginning or the end of a change in a property. The property we're going to change is position. I want him to be off the screen, I don't know, maybe somewhere around here. So I'm going to just drag him across the screen where I want him to end up. Now, because I have a keyframe set already, it'll automatically add another keyframe if this keyframe matches what I'm doing. For example, if this was a scale property and I moved it over here and I didn't change the scale, it wouldn't add a keyframe. But because I added a position keyframe at the beginning, watch this. When I drag him across, it adds a keyframe down below. And I want him to go all the way across the screen, probably about like that. And now he goes across the screen. It looks great. But in the version that Vox did, we have these heads that are kind of bobbing and floating along. So I want him to bob and float. So what I'm going to do is just move forward a couple seconds and have him do something different. Change his position. I'm going to have him bob upward, and then I'm going to go forward and have him bob down and go forward again and have him bob back up. And then as we're hitting the home stretch, he'll kind of go down by himself. And that would look like this. And because he's going so slowly, you can't really tell that it's super linear, but it will look a lot better instead of being like hard turns at every spot. If we smooth out the animation a bit, it'll just look a little more graceful. So to do that, I'm going to right click on this clip, click Show Keyframe Animation, and I have all of the keyframes here that I can modify. Now, the only property I was really messing with as I was bobbing him up and down was the Y-axis. He's going up, he's going down, he's going up, he's going down. And at the end, we kind of ease into the X-axis down there where he's sliding into home base. So all I do is I double click on this Y property here and it opens up the keyframe graph. Now I just click on these keyframes and I can add a curve to it. Now when it's blue, I can add a curve to it. So I'm going to click on that guy, add a curve. Click on this one, add a curve. Click on this one, add a curve. And click on this guy and add another curve. And what this does is it smooths out the motion. So instead of being a hard, going down and going back up, it just gently floats back up nicely. And then he leaves the screen. And for this last one, I want the X-axis to change a little bit so it kind of smooths into home base there. So I'm going to double click on X and click on this guy and also add this auto curve. Now we do have other curve options, this guy, and we have some fancier ones over here, but we're not going to cover those in this video. It just gives you a little more control. Another thing you might want to know is that you can adjust how these guys smooth in and out by dragging this handle up and down, something you can kind of play with and do what works best for you. Now I am going to do one more of these with you, then you can do the next two by yourself, so pay attention. And I really suggest, maybe watch this video all the way through once and then just go through and stop as you need to so you can do all of these things. I'm going to close this graph, right click, choose hide keyframe animation. Next thing we're going to do is have this second guy kind of follow along. So I'm going to highlight Bad Frenchman right here. I'm going to type the letter V so he shows up again. And I don't want him to appear until right about here. I want him to start here and then follow this guy along, bobbing and weaving. So I'm going to position him right where I want him to start, right about there. That would be the very first frame. And I'm going to trim him up because I don't don't need to seam it all before that. So I'm just going to trim this guy up and set a keyframe to mark his position here. Bam. And then move forward to where I want him to be when this guy goes off screen, right about there, just so we can kind of keep the same distance, about like that. Notice when I dragged him here, it added another keyframe. So now we have him following pretty closely along, but then he just stops. But I want him to keep going at about the same rate as the first guy. So I'm going to just kind of get a feel for where the first guy lands by clicking on him so I can see that bounding box. And now these first two guys look like this. It's about right. And he stops there, which isn't great. I want him to keep going at about the same speed. So that's going to be something I'm going to have to mess with a little bit to make sure that the speed matches. So I'm going to move forward a little farther and drag this guy all the way off the screen and see if he went too fast there. And I'll show you how to fix that. This is something that's really important. Now, one thing you should realize is that everything I'm teaching you in this particular video applies to other programs like Adobe Premiere and Adobe After Effects, because keyframes work almost exactly the same in any program. So if you're thinking, oh, I want to learn the higher end one first, After Effects, this is actually a great trainer to get you into After Effects if you want to go there eventually. So let's go ahead and look at these guys and see if the speed is right towards the end here. And you see he kind of sped up. So what do I do to slow him down without having to look and mess around with it? All you have to do to slow him down is make these keyframes farther apart, because right now we're saying during this time period from 2022 to, looking right here, to 2319, I want you to go from point A to point B. But I want you to take longer to get there. So to make him take longer to get there, I just drag this guy farther apart and then he'll go slower. So let's see if that works. And so when he gets to that keyframe, yeah, he's, maybe a little too slow. So I'll just drag this guy back a little bit. And as long as it's close, it's going to be fine. So let's see, how does that look? Yeah, it looks like let's see, does it speed up? Yeah, he kind of maintained the same speed. So that's gonna work really well. Now we're just going to animate this guy maybe a little bit differently than the other one. So he's bobbing up and down, maybe bobbing even a little bit more. So we're just going to, he's down there. So I'm just going to go forward a little bit and drag him up. And I'm really trying to drag him straight up and not back and forth. He's already got the back and forth thing going. Notice it's adding a keyframe. Then I'm going to drag him back down a little bit. And I'm going to go forward and drag him back up and back down, adding another keyframe and then back up. And he's naturally going back down following him. And that looks pretty good, I think. I'm going to click off of him because I want to get rid of this bounding box, because you can't really see what's going on as well with that thing distracting you. So I just click anywhere else. And now when I drag these guys, that guy's moving a little faster, but and if we scrub through this, we see that they're moving at slightly different paces and stuff. And that kind of keeps it interesting, I think. And I'm going to go ahead and add the curves one more time for you. Then it's going to be up to you to do the same thing for the next two moving bubbles. So what do? We right click, we choose show keyframe animation, and we double click on the Y, and we select each of these and just add that curve. Then I right click, I hide the keyframe animation, and we get this. He's gently bobbing up and down following that first guy. Now it's up to you guys to do the next two on your own. If you don't really get how to do it yet, just rewatch the first part. It's exactly the same. If you're trying to follow along, your animation should look something like this. Right now I'm just going to scrub through it, and you've got these guys bouncing and bobbing along here nice and smoothly. And if I play it, the speed's about like this. And there's no rules, guys. You can do it however you want, but just so you understand the concepts. Next, we need a background. Now, Vox had this kind of, fake background they made, mixed, real stuff, mixed with fake stuff, mixed with stuff cut out, kind of funky. I'm not an artist or anything, so I just went out my front yard and I shot this with my camera. Just took a picture of the forest out front, and we're just going to drag that underneath everything down here, and that's going to be our background for the entire duration. Now notice that it doesn't let me drag it underneath that. I have to drag this above it, and now I can stretch this guy out. He's going to last the entire duration. And also notice that this layer is like, oh, there's nothing down there. You want to make best use of your space. I'm going to highlight all of these guys and just drag them all down like that. With the forest in the background looks like this. And dude, if you think this is kind of cool so far, do me a favor and hit subscribe and leave a comment, since you guys are pretty much the only people I talk to all day long. Next, you may have noticed in Vox's, these guys are moving behind trees. How do you get them to move behind trees? I mean, the trees are they're way back there. How can they move behind? Well, we just make trees. So I created a tree here's an oak. And I'm just going to drag this oak right here and have it last the duration of the clip. And, we could just leave him right there. And look at these guys are going behind him, because these layers determine where something is going to appear. Anything that's on top will be in the foreground in front, will appear in front of everything. And anything below that will appear behind it. So because the tree's on top, all these these guys are appearing behind it. Watch, they all pass right behind it. But we don't have to just leave it there. We could put it somewhere strategically. So let's click on this guy, drag him over here, maybe scale him up, and you may have noticed that this guy is actually this tree. If you don't want it to be so obvious that we're duplicating trees, just click on this guy and oh, he's flipped the other way and no one will ever know. Let's make him maybe a little bigger, scale him up, and because he's in the foreground, let's go ahead and throw him out of focus because, you know, with a camera, the stuff that's super close to the camera will be out of focus if I'm just focused on these guys here. So to do that, we're just going to go over to Effects, click on Video Effects, click on Favorites, and I've saved this one called Lens Blur. It's a pro. There's other things you can mess with, but this one works pretty well. If you want to blur something out, I drag him here, and I'm going to drag the speed all the way left so he stays blurry the whole time, and I actually speed all the way left, but the blur less because that's too obnoxious. Just a slight, subtle blur. So it kind of looks more natural. Maybe move them over a little more, and now when these guys come on, they're behind that tree. Now let's go ahead and add another tree. Going back into media, let's add oak tree number 2, and we'll put him in the foreground as well. Make him last the whole duration. Bam, we've got oak tree 2. Now let's put this guy behind everyone. So I'm going to drag him over here and notice that it's the same tree as this one. That's the one I cut out. I'm just going to flop that dude by clicking this button here, and he's facing that way now, but he's going to be in the background. To do that, just going to drag him underneath all those layers of me. And now we're going to all go in front of him. So we're going behind this guy, in front of that guy. And I have one more that's even more fun, that's more similar to what they did. I cut out a madrone. We got these madrone trees in our yard, and these things are they're just beautiful. And I want these guys to go behind the madrone. And I'm going to drag him here so it's kind of more about there. And I want these guys to go behind that guy as well. So I'm just going to leave him there. So we're going behind. Let's make him a little smaller because he's kind of blocking people out quite a bit. Just put him wherever you want. And you don't have to put these guys anywhere in particular, and you can duplicate them and have more layers of trees. In fact, we're going to do that. We'll look here and go, oh, these guys are going behind that madrone. Looks pretty dope. And I'm going to just hold down the Option key on a Mac, the Alt key on a PC, click and drag up. Now I've got 2 madrones. I'm going to flop the second one so we can identify it. It's facing the other way. Let's put him way over here and have these guys pass in front of him. How do we do that with this guy? Well, let's make him much bigger so it's not so obvious it's the same tree. Just something like that. And have those guys pass in front of him. I just drag him underneath everything. And bam. If we scroll through here, we've got guys going behind trees, in front of trees. And I don't know, if you ask me, that looks pretty cool. If you change your mind, you're like, no, I want them to go in front of this tree and behind that one. We could do that too. So we could just drag this tree down behind everyone and drag this guy back above. And then it's kind of a little more back and forthy, back and forth, back and forth. So yeah, that's kind of how I want it. And we've got one more thing we can add in here. I made this stop sign with artificial intelligence, drag this guy here, and I want him to be, I don't know, maybe different so that some guys go in front of him, some guys go behind him. I'm gonna make this street sign last the entire duration, and maybe I want it a little bit bigger, and we'll drag him, I don't know, somewhere around here. And some of these dudes will go in front of him, some behind him. Watch this. So that guy went in front of him and everybody else went behind him. What? That's kind of cool, right? You may have noticed that in Vox's video, they had a bird flying across screen. See this bird right here? Flying behind the trees and then just leaving the screen. So let's make a bird. Well, I did. I went into CapCut's text-to-image generator in the mobile version and made this eagle in one take. So let's go ahead and bring this eagle to our timeline by clicking and dragging him down here. And we want him to just kind of fly through the scene for a second. He's going to be kind of short and sweet. And right now he's way too big. We're going to adjust all the properties. So I'm going to scale him down, position my playhead at the beginning of where I want this guy to show up, and he's going to be pretty fast. Even that's possibly too long because, eagles are fast. Zooming in, so I have a little more control, I can see what's going on. And if I want to go side to side on the timeline, I can hit the Option key on my Mac or the Alt key on a PC, and I'm just going to scroll over with my mouse to get that guy centered. Position my playhead at the beginning of where I want this guy to appear, put him where I want him to appear. I want him to appear from behind that tree. So I'm going to put him right there and drag him under that tree. Position plate at the beginning, set keyframes for scale, position, and rotate. And I want him to fly down here from behind that tree, fly in front of here, get bigger, and then get a little smaller as he flies maybe behind that tree. And the way we're going to do that is make him a little smaller to start, so he's a little dude, and then I'm going to position the playhead about the middle of where he's going to be moving and position him here in front of this sign. And he's been flying down, right? And we want him to kind of continue, fly down the whole way, so he's going to be flying down and getting bigger. So watch this. He starts small, he flies down, he's getting bigger, and then he's going to start rotating up. So let's go ahead and have him start to rotate up there, then go to the end of where we want him to leave, probably about there, drag him all the way over here, have him fly behind that tree and end up over here, rotated, all the way because he's flying back up, and he's maybe a little smaller because he's flying out of the frame like that. And let's see if that looks good. So you can see, boom, and we can have him end up a little smaller maybe and rotate it a little more so it's a little more obvious. And bam, it looks like this. But we want him behind the tree. How do I get him behind that tree? Well, I think is it that one? Yeah, it's that one. So we just drag him down one more layer. Boom. And now we got this guy going. You might notice that there are two keyframes right here because I rotated him prematurely. I should have waited till he was at this frame to rotate him all the way. So I'm going to rotate this guy all the way, click on this one and delete it. Then I'm going to add some curves so it's not so jerky for all of them. You know how to do that. I'm going to add one curve, then I'm going to fast forward and you can do the rest on your own. Right click, show keyframe animation, double click on X and go to each of these keyframes, add the defaults. Fine for most things. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other properties. You don't have to watch. This will take 1 second for you. Now our eagle looks like this now. And I don't really like that. And that's because I added that curve to the X keyframe and it's just easing in and easing out. And it's just too many curves sometimes. Right click, show keyframe animation, double click on this X guy, bam, bam, click on the keyframe and get rid of that. And then it should be a little better. Before I get out of here, let's make sure it looks right. Yeah, much better, right? So now the eagle looks like this, flies behind the tree, in front of the pole, behind the other tree, and off the screen. That looks pretty sweet, I think. We're almost at the finish line, but you may have noticed that in Vox's version, they animate the entire scene. The whole scene gets bigger, and then it kind of zooms back out again right here. I want you to do the same thing. In a perfect world, we could select all of these clips, right-click, and create another compound clip, but CapCut only lets you have one compound clip. You can't have a compound clip within another one. You can in other programs like After Effects, CapCut you can't. The workaround is just export your entire edit so far and then bring it into a new project and animate it using the keyframes for position and scale so you can do something similar to what Vox did. I'm going to do that, add some music and sound effects, and give you the finished masterpiece. I think CapCut is a secret weapon that will skyrocket your YouTube career, as long as it's used responsibly. If you don't embrace the CapCut, you will be part of the future generation that is struggling to adapt to the evolution of the social media. We should be figuring out, how to master CapCut. Hi, Mom! And the best way to do that by far is to take Trevor's course, Master CapCut. It will give you an unfair advantage, so try to be humble when, you're better than everyone else. Dude, if you want to figure out how to do all of this stuff on your own, you've got to take the greatest course ever created in the history of Earth. Master CapCut. You'll just get it and then be able to create about anything you can dream up. Just click right here or go to the link in the description. There's zero risk. If you just can't take me anymore after checking out the course, all you gotta do is say, Trevor,
give me my money.
And I'll immediately give you all your dollars back because I just hate it when people aren't happy.